Hiya, today I'd like to tell you a bit more about planting tanks, like the one I've got here. I'd like to say a few words about rooting, pruning, propagating live aquarium plants. Like you say, I don't have many of them, but I have a second tank, 180 liter, I think it's fluval. I'm not sure now, which I'm gonna use in another video in about a week or two time. But anyway, live aquarium plants. As you know, live plants can completely transform your aquarium, your fish tank. I'm gonna tell you about few simple tricks for rooting and anchoring live plants. There's gonna be a few tips for pruning and propagation as well. Live plants, as you know, can completely transform the look of your fish tank. They are obviously more realistic as some artificial plants may look. Nothing compares to the real thing. Plus, live plants come with added bonus of producing valuable oxygen for your fish. A loosely planted tank is sight to be behold, but it does to take a fair amount of work to get there. In addition to choosing the right kind of substrate for your planting tank, you also need to decide where you want to put your plants and how to keep them there. Some fish have a penchant for uprooting live plants, and other factors such as strong current can make it challenge to keep your plants where you want them. You have to understand the different types of aquarium plants. I'm a big fan of easy life plants. Because sometimes I change water on a weekly basis, sometimes every second week, because I'm not in my hometown every weekend, for instance. So that's why I choose easy plants, make my job easier. When you first start shopping around for live aquarium plants, you'll find that they are sold in several different ways. Popular options like Amazon sword, crimps, hairgrass are typically sold in small pots, usually small plastic pots. Rhizomatous plants like Anubias or Java fern are typically sold by the rhizome, also known as the rootstock or subterranean stern, from which roots and leaves nuts grow. Other plants like mosses and stem plants may be sold by bunches. Each of the different kinds of live plants needs to be treated in different way, and it comes to placing them in a tank while floating. For instance, there are floating plants. Some of them the floating ones. No, forget about floating ones. We're gonna leave it for another video. There are simple tricks for anchoring live plants. I use I've got from Amazon as well. Give me a second. I'm sure I got some of them here. Oh, there you go. Probably one of those is at the top of the fish tank. Usually I use one of these for anchoring live plants. and that's my scissors. Bit rusty, but that's my scissors for cutting them down. Um, about anchoring. If you plan to cultivate a triply planted tank, you may want to consider putting down a framework or under the substrate, and that covers the entire bottom of the fish tank. I didn't use that. I just put some gravel on the bottom, placed some plants, and then covered the roots with extra layer of gravel and then some sand. I added some other substrates to cultivate. Something like plastic embroidery mesh work well. I used that a couple times and it's good. I recommend that. It won't obstruct water flow, and you'll be able to place the plants wherever you like. To use this kind of anchor, just put down the mesh and then use the cotton thread to tie your roots bundles to the mesh where you want them. Then simply cover the entire tank with chosen substrate like I did. If you don't plan to use entire, if you don't want to plant your entire tank, you can use a small pieces of plastic embroidery mesh, or you can repurpose something you already have on your hand, like plastic Tupperware lid. Take the lid and poke a series of holes into facilitate water flow, and then simply slide the cotton thread through one of those holes and up through another, and anchor your plants the way you like. Again, you can place lid wherever you want, and then cover it with the substrate you're using. Another option for anchoring aquarium plants is to attach them to a movable tank object, such as rock or piece of driftwood. If you want to use rocks, make sure to choose something that won't change the water chemistry in your fish tank. You can use smooth river rocks. The best, just make sure to clean it well before you use it. You can buy a driftwood. I've got those two dark ones. That's mahon for aquarium. Yeah, the driftwood. You can get it in every pet store. And you can make your own, like I did. I got some stuff from my lake and the rivers that are around my place. When making your own driftwood, you'll need to cure it first to remove all the tannins. After that, simply use the same cotton thread to tie small plants to the driftwood and place it in your aquarium. Usually, if I find a nice driftwood, usually I cook it for a couple of minutes. And then keep it for a couple of days in a bucket on my balcony, and after a couple of days I placed in my fish tank. That's what I do. About pruning now, pruning and trimming live plants. Like I showed you before, I used bent scissors. You can use any scissors really. If the conditions in your tank are favorable and your plants are comparatively rooted in nutrient-rich substrate, like I've got from a lake, they grow quickly. Some plants grow faster than others, but at some point you'll find yourself faced with the task of pruning your plants. I do that every week or two. It just depends. While some plants can be trimmed anywhere without affecting the growth of the plant, other need to be trimmed in a specific way, otherwise the plant will rot. So how do you know to prune your plants? Well, it depends what type they are. Here are some general tips. Well, about stem plants, these plants need to be pruned more often than any other aquarium plants. You should know how to do it properly. You can prune stem plants by trimming off the top 2 inches, as long as it's no more than 50% of the plant existing length. To propagate, place cut stems in an inch of substrate, then relocate them in wherever you like them to grow. Potted plants, yeah. Most potted plants, like crypts, like I've got here, or Amazon sort, require very little maintenance, to be honest. That's why I'm a big fan of them. There's not much work with them. They tend to grow more slowly than stem plants. If the plant becomes too thick, simply cut off a few leaves at the base of the roots. You should also do this occasionally with yellow or dying leaves. If the plant is growing too tall, remove the taller leaves and then let the younglings grow. Don't cut the leaves directly because it can't stress the plant, and then it may die off. About the mosses, I don't have them in this fish tank. I might be going to get them. It depends, because I might be going to get stink pots, and they like mosses. Many of those, many species of moss are easy to grow, especially with higher nitrate levels. Trimming aquarium moss is pretty straightforward. Thus you may need to remove it from the tank to do it. When you replace the moss, anchor it to driftwood or rock to keep it in place. About rhizomes, plants like Java fern and anubias are easy to trim and propagate. You simply have to split the rhizome at the base of the plant and root them into the new location. Simply as that. You probably might ask how to propagate different aquarium plants. Well, from my point of view, it's good to have different aquarium plants. It's good for fish, it's good for the water. In the same way that different types of plants need to be trimmed in certain ways, there are different methods of propagating live plants as well. There are 2 different ways by which live plants reproduce. There's a sexual reproduction or asexual reproduction, simple. Sexual propagation usually involves flowers and seeds, whereas asexual propagation or vegetative propagation is completed through the production of runners, offsets, and plantlets. Most aquatic plants are asexual. Propagation methods, here is an overview. Actually, I'm gonna give you an overview of the different options. Runners. A runner grows out of the base of a parent plant and produces small slips on the end. These slips anchor to the substrate and then begin to grow an entirely new plant. One genetically identical to the parent plant, obviously. You can either let this happen naturally, or you can separate the runners from the plant once it anchors and then transplant it. Offsets. An offset is similar to a runner, expected usually grows of the main plant itself. Very close to it. You can remove the offset and plant it wherever else to propagate the plant. Plantlets. In this method, small plantlets actually grow on the parent plant. They can form any part of the plants, such as the roots, nuts, leaves, or stems. Once the parent plant well, they grow off the parent plant, let's put it this way. Once the planted has had a chance to grow a little, it may naturally sever from the parent plant, and you can move it. If it hasn't happened by the time the plantlet grows to 3 or 4 centimeters, you can remove it and replant it. Well, these three propagation methods, like runners, offsets, plantlets, are natural processes, but you can also propagate aquatic plants artificially. One option is to take a cutting plant in a substrate, so it will grow roots. To do this, take a cutting from the top stem, just above a leaf node, and then remove any leaves just around the nodule. You can also artificially propagate certain plants by dividing the rhizome. Just take a sharp knife or razor blade and divide the solid rhizome at the base of the plant into 2 or 3 selections. Then root each individual selection wherever you want. Another option is to propagate by way of seeds, but it's much more difficult to do, and it's usually only worth if you plan to grow a large number of plants. If you want to work your way up to a fully planted tank, you can do it without spending a small fortune. Simply start with a small collection of plants and then propagate new growth when you do your monthly pruning. It may take time for you to completely plant your tank, but you feel good knowing you created something beautiful entirely on your own. Well, that's pretty much it about rooting, pruning, and cultivating your plants. That's just a couple easy ways about easy plants. Everybody do it. Everybody find his own way. I like just cutting the newbies and plant them into new places, and that's it. That's what I usually do, and this is what we like, don't we?